am hopeful that you will have a nice chunk of time in class after I'm done a talkie. So you can work on the gathering of a synthesis article, and you can work on your third quarter paper, part 3, which is actually, as of right now, you don't even have to do that. Just make sure that you've analyzed one of the documents for tomorrow, a discussion.
So we can take notes on each document.
Right. That'll be tomorrow. Tomorrow, after a very brief intro by me, we will be segmenting into 7 different groups based on document. You'll agree with your fellow document analyzers about what the content of your document was. We'll share with each other. We'll jigsaw, and then you will be given the responsibility of writing a 4-paragraph paper, 2 paragraphs arguing the justification for American involvement in the Spanish-American War, 2 paragraphs arguing against American involvement in the Spanish-American War, due 1 week from tomorrow. Well, yeah. If you're asking like, how can we write that 4-paragraph thing when we haven't gotten to the Spanish-American War yet? That's a good point. Sorry. Blame the snow days. We're ahead of the other schools. So what we are now looking at is. Oh boy.
Shush.
Because I saw you playing with it other places. We'll just put it right there. We are now looking at the Plains Indians, the ending of the last bastion of Native American semi-autonomous existence, the Plains Indians. What happened to them? So we're looking at a map here. So the Native Americans who lived out west, as westward expansion is occurring, there are Plains Indians that have a certain way of living. They chase the buffalo. They're nomadic. Well, they're in the way, right? They're in the way of American westward expansion. So what are we going to do with them? So as the U.S. expands westward, confronts these Indians, we need to deal with them in a certain way. And I'm introducing to you now 2 treaties. Fort Laramie Treaty, the Fort Atkinson Treaty. And guess what they said? Guess the general pattern.
Go over here and we'll bug you.
That's right. Go away, and in return, you'll go away. If that sounds kind of one-sided to you, that's because they were very, very one-sided. And your claim to any land, and in exchange, we will acknowledge your end claim to any land. Very, very lopsided. Okay. Who signed these treaties? When the United States signs a treaty with a foreign nation, who is the dignitary that says signature? Who is that person on behalf of the U.S.?
President.
Usually it's the president, right? Actually, it is. All treaties have to be ratified by the Senate. But it's usually the president that sends the Secretary of State or something like that to negotiate the treaty, or maybe an ambassador. Who signs it on behalf of Native Americans? Do they have a president?
And the chief.
Okay, the chief, right?
But they don't have a
The chief, which I want to stress this as far as the Plains Indians. Chief is a white invention. The U.S. invented Plains chiefs. Their previous encounter with Indians on the coast led them to believe all Indians are the same. You must have a chief, just like the other Indians. And of course, that's ignorant. Native Americans are not one people with one language and one culture. They're varied. That's like saying the Europeans had a chief. Well, maybe the Germans did, but the British didn't, or the French did, or whatever. You know, to say Indians are one group of people is fairly ignorant. But that didn't stop the U.S., who simply labeled, "You're the chief. Here, put your signature right here. You speak on behalf of your people." And it was just Bill, you know, who happened to be sort of agreeable and so put his signature. So maybe not fair. The creation of designated lands. Today we call this reservations, right? Anyone know, do reservations exist today? Yeah, they do. They do. So that policy of let's set aside some land and give it to the natives and there. And you're looking at what's called the Great Sioux Reservation. How many of you have been to Mount Rushmore, Black Hills? Yes? Okay. That's right there. So a nice chunk of land that would be designated Indian land. Will never bother you again. Is that true? Certainly not, right? This land is certainly not a Native American reservation today. But it lasted for a while, It lasted for a while until gold was discovered, and that was the end of that. But again, the policy here is what's important. Another example is you and I today call this Oklahoma. Back then it was designated Indian land. Will never bother you again. And you can see, maybe you can or can't, but the state of Indiana was actually subdivided, so each tribe got their own chunk of land. They didn't just throw them all in there and say, all right, mix. The Cherokee got a spot, the Choctaw got a spot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They each got their own designated area until whites said, but that's good land. We should take that land, and opened up Indian land to white settlement, and they changed the name to Oklahoma. Anybody here know what is the it's the Wisconsin Badgers and the Golden Gophers? It's the Oklahoma Sooners. Anyone know why? Why are they called the Sooners?
They didn't want to have it later.
Because this is true. When the federal government opened up Oklahoma to settlement, what they did was they plotted the properties out, and they put little flags. If you were the first one, when they shot the gun, they had a race. If you were the first one to get to the flag, you got that plot of land. But some people cheated. They went the night before, and as soon as they heard the gun, they grabbed the flag. They left too soon. And now they're called the Oklahoma Sooners. Why don't you just call them the Oklahoma Cheaters? Because that's what it means. What a great emblem. The Oklahoma Cheaters. It's almost as intimidating as Gophers. Because if there's one thing that frightens people, it's a gopher. Oh my God, a gopher!
What about Ohio? They're literally a nut.
Well, a tree.
Tree, nut tree, same thing.
Buckeye.
Okay, tree. Okay, it's a
I
tree.
know, that's intimidating. A tree.
Oh my God, a tree. This is the end of these. This is a pile of, well, I don't know. What's that guy standing on?
Horns.
Skulls.
Skulls of
The
Bulls.
things that they hunt.
buffalo.
Yeah,
Buffalo skulls.
I said it's
The
bulls.
Plains Indians lived off of the buffalo. They used every part of it for clothing and nutrition and siding for their houses, teepees. And the white man looked at it and said, cool, let's hunt it, and hunted it to near extinction. Now, if any of you have been to the Black Hills lately, you know there is a wild herd out there that has been done through manipulation by the U.S. Department of the Interior to bring back the herds, to bring it back to its native situation. The U.S. Department of the Interior has also attempted to bring back the wolf, to reintroduce it to parts of the West where it exists. But I'm showing you this because this is an American hunt. That these weren't Native Americans doing this. This was the Americans, white people, wiping out the herd. And so now think if you're a Plains Indian. Problem number one are the railroads. They're coming, and good luck taking your bow and arrow and shooting it at a railroad, shooting it at a train. Right? They're not going to really harm that train. Problem number two is they're hunting your buffalo. Right? They're wiping you out. You got no chance. You're going to get wiped out. Your way of life is over. And so what's your choice here? Okay. Well, one group said we refuse to accept this. We're going to fight. Okay. Now you're talking about. Any of you been to Montana? Did you see the battlefield? The Battle of Little Bighorn? Did you happen to go by there? It's pretty cool. Just to know that this was sort of the last big battle of at a major level of any Native American group against the U.S. military. The Battle of Little Bighorn. Does anyone happen to know who was the famous American commander? What's his name? He had a last stand. Custer. That's right. George Armstrong Custer, who did fight in the American Civil War. And he had a last stand. That sounds heroic, doesn't it? It makes it sound like he took out 10 of them before he finally succumbed to his injuries. Yeah. He was an idiot. And I said that on tape. The guy was a moron. He and his the group that he was with in the American military numbered, actually, would someone mind looking that up? Battle of Little Bighorn, how many soldiers did the U.S. military have there versus how many warriors did the Native Americans have there? It was not close. I mean, it was like 500 to 100 or something like that. Is anyone looking that up for me?
1,500 to 2,500 warriors for the Indians and 700 cavalry.
Okay, so two to one. But Custer attacked anyway. The arrogance of the American general there, thinking, well, we're superior. There's no way we can lose this, and he got wiped out. Every American killed or captured, everyone. A good day for the natives, but it's not going to last. You're going to win the battle, lose the war, right? There's not a single war in American history where the Native Americans can actually claim we won the war. It's we won the battle. We live to fight another day, and then the other day happened, and that was it, right? The end. The only thing that's up here that you might not know is buffalo soldiers.
They were what Indians called the white soldiers.
No, they are not what the Indians called the white soldiers.
No, it's what someone called.
You're really, really close.
It's what the black
soldiers.
Black soldiers.
Native Americans on the plains had never seen black people before, and so here's this dark-skinned person wearing a U.S. military uniform. They called them buffalo soldiers, right? They used a term that they understood to explain what they were looking at. It was not a term of an insult. It was not meant as an insult. It simply meant you sort of remind me of buffalo. That's it, right? So not a big term of insult. The commanding officer of the Native American Army, Sitting Bull, who would be hunted down after the Battle of Little Bighorn and eventually captured by the U.S. military. Another commanding officer, Crazy Horse, who, again, how many of you have been to the Black Hills, the Crazy Horse Memorial? It's taking a while, but I'm going back to this one intentionally. Remember, this was supposed to be land set aside for the Native Americans, and then the U.S. government changed its mind, but not only changed its mind, but authorized the carving into Holy Lands the 4 whitest people you'll ever see, right? And just to sort of add insult to injury, here we're going to take the land away that we designated to you, and the Black Hills are considered holy land by the Sioux, and then we're going to carve into a mountain 4 white guys. Is sort of the way it's looked at by certain groups of people. And later on, the U.S. government, in a moment of self-reflection, and I do mean this, that one of the things that the U.S. is good at is saying, you know what, we effed up. Sorry about that. We shouldn't have done that. Later on in this class, we're going to look at what the U.S. government did with Japanese Americans, right, during World War II. Later on, the U.S. said that was a mistake. Should not have done that. Apologized for slavery. Go look at what other countries do. It's really interesting. One of the things that they're not good at is acknowledging a mistake. Go ask the Japanese government about what they did during World War II and where their apology is. You won't find it. You will not find an apology for Japanese behavior during World War II. And that is because the Japanese government has concluded, right or wrong, that to acknowledge past mistakes is to admit weakness and that we were wrong. And we can't let people know we were wrong, so we're not going to emphasize previous mistakes, which is not the conclusion that the U.S. has reached about certain things. Not everything, but certain things. Okay. So back to where we were. We weren't that far. In a moment of apology, the U.S. government said to Native American groups, gee, we're sorry about the 4 white guys. Why don't you carve your heroes into a mountain? And here's some money. Here, we'll pay for it. And now anyone know how the story ends?
No, we don't want that.
That's right. Native Americans said, we're not taking your money. And continues to this day to not accept any federal funding for the Crazy Horse Memorial, which is enormous. The head alone is larger than Mount Rushmore, just to give you some scope about how big this sucker is going to be when it's finally finished, and maybe my great-grandchildren can see it because it is slow going. Because they got to pay for it, and they're not funding it. Any of you been there?
It's still going?
Oh, definitely. And this is about how far they are.
When was it start today?
That's about how far they are. That's right.
Wait,
And it costs, right? So if you go to Mount Rushmore, it's free. But if you go actually park in the parking lot and go see this, you got to pay it.
Where
It's
is
kind of
that?
expensive. It's about a mile from Mount Rushmore, South Dakota.
When was it started?
I don't know. Does anyone know? When was the Crazy Horse Memorial started?
When the world was still in black and white.
Probably right. Mount Rushmore was completed early 1930s or something, 1940.
1948.
The Crazy Horse, 1940. Okay, last thing, and then you have the rest of the hour. In my opinion, number one, this is the worst law ever. To me, number one, the worst law ever passed by the U.S. government. This is it. This is the law that declared that there was no such thing as Native American. That's done. You are no longer a Native American. All these lands, you can see lands lost by Native American groups in certain years. So the yellow is lands lost prior to 1850. The darkish, this is kind of yellow. It gets a little bit darker here. Lands lost 1850, 1870. The red represents lands lost 1870 to 1890. And generally it was over for Native Americans 1890. But again, remember, the U.S. government said, well, we'll designate lands, reservations, the green areas. We'll give you the green areas. We'll give you the green areas. And as if the Native Americans would say, wow, thanks. Thanks a lot for taking all our land and then giving us back some crumbs. Wow, you sure are generous. And this law ended the green, took it all away. No more green, no more reservations. What do you need a reservation for? You're not an Indian. There is no Indian. Join us. Another way of saying what I'm trying to say is become white. Convert, right? Stop speaking your funny languages. Speaky American. Join the Christian team. Stop having worship sessions where you jump around a fire with your ceremonial spear for a good hunt. Stop it. Join our team. Native American ended. Now again, synthesis. What Hitler would do is similar. They had, the Nazis had this thing called the final solution. We'll get there. When we get to World War II and Nazi behavior, the Germans went through a series of decisions about what we're going to do with Jews and Gypsies and Eastern Europeans. And their final solution was similar to the American final solution, right? This would seemingly end the Native Americans. Only the Nazis did something else, right? When we say no more Jews, the Nazis meant it. Like, no more Jews. We did not end the lives of these people. We simply said, you're not Indian anymore. No more reservations. You're going to live like the rest of us. You're going to own property and you're going to farm it, or you're going to mine it, or you're going to go to school and you're going to learn English and you're going to worship the right God, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The end of the culture. The end. Now, again, today we know that that's not true, right? That there are Indian reservations. Now, what does that tell you? We went back. That's right. The U.S. changed its mind. That later on, now this is 1887. This law would be in effect till about 1935.
Isn't the Turtle Lake Casino on an Indian reservation?
Yes. Okay. So 1935, so you're talking about 50-ish years where this was the law of the land. Yes?
So then did that law just expire, or did they vote it out?
Good question. Stay tuned. Is right. You got it.
Wait, and then
Why'd you say wait?
if they for 50 years they're just like not allowed to be Indians, like when that law was like over, or they're just like, oh, okay, I'll go get my stuff and be an Indian again.
That's right.
Like they just like
You'll go get your stuff and be an Indian again. That's exactly right. Where's my Indian stuff? I think you're identifying a very good question, and that is, when this law ended, how did that occur? How do you prove you're an Indian again? Well, you're suggesting that the Native Americans accepted this.
But still, it's not the same as like being able to like publicly like.
Oh, I think you're right. I think you're identifying a very good series of questions about how do you end this policy. Very good. So again, what the Dawes Act did was it dissolved the tribes. It did award, if you were the head of household, if you were dad, you were given land, 160 acres. Now, an acre is about the size of a slightly smaller than a football field. So 160 acres, 160 football fields. It's okay, right? And what are you going to do with that land? Well, supposedly you'd farm it, or maybe mine it, or sell it. That's what usually happened. And that usually didn't go well, right? These corporations would look at your 160 acres and make an offer and convince you to take the offer. And so I don't know. I have to be careful here. I can't say most because I don't know if it's most. A whole lot of Indians lost the land that they were given to American companies that were moving westward and manipulated and took advantage of the land. Crooked federal agents twisted some arms here to get Indians to sell their land. It did not go well. It did not go well. If the land was awarded to you, you had something like 3 to 5 years to prove that you deserve to keep it. Okay? If you did a good job, you could join the winning team. The white team. Right? This is an example of assimilation, right? You're going to end your culture and join our culture. Stop celebrating your weird holidays and celebrate Super Bowl Sunday.
Super Bowl.
What I said? No. Okay. And I say here it was the policy until ... I think 1935 is about right. I'm not going to say the answer here, but if any of you know, Just think about this. What was going on in 1935? What's the world situation going on?
World War.
Okay, so Hitler is in power, and he did just get there, 1933-ish. They're starting to adopt policies that eliminated the Jew as an entity, and FDR is president. Very good. He looked at what Hitler was doing and saying, my God, we're the playbook. Where did he get that idea? In part, he looked at how the U.S. treated Native Americans and said, but we're not. Please put this in the back of your head that during FDR's presidency, what he did was he looked at what Hitler did and said, we need to do the opposite. So while Hitler was invading his neighbors, the U.S. withdrew the Marines from Central and South America. While Hitler was wiping out Jews, the U.S. adopted a policy that said this was bad. The opposite of Hitler. Right. Okay. Yay, FDR. That's it. I'm done. So you do have about a half hour to accomplish, and I will happily float amongst you. Look at your document, understand it. Have you found your synthesis article for your Blue Book essay? If not, you've got time. Shall I run and get the computers? They're in my room. I'll go get them. Kias are always a thing. You've got the rest of the hour.
Wait, it only goes to chapter 26. So there's no more after 26. Or is there another one next week? 27?
Yeah, this week and next week. Isn't there 27?
Are you saying that there's no 27 on Kia?